Hello, friends. Welcome to the Creative Healing Podcast. I'm your host, Grant Davis, and today I'm here with my friend, Ragen Locricchio. And I just learned how to pronounce her last name 2 minutes ago. How'd I do?
Great.
Good.
Really hit all the syllables.
I'm glad to hear it. How are you today?
Fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. We just had a good long talk.
Yeah.
About
Life talk.
Life talk.
It's great.
Anything and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that we should take pride in the fact that we are some of Take Two Performance Studio's first students here.
Honestly, that's true. I think the first time I was at Take Two, they were in the South Rack. For those of you who don't know, that's the South Reno Athletic Club. It's a gym. But there was like this extra space in a random room, and she put up a divider wall, and we had probably 5 people in the acting class, in like the teen adult acting class.
Yep.
And from there we went to the Smithridge
No,
building.
this one's
Oh, this
Smithridge.
is the Smithridge.
I don't know if that one had a building name. That was just like...
That was like by the gym though, right?
Oh, yeah, it was right across the
Yeah.
street.
It's a huge studio, and gosh, we've been doing this for so long.
I know. It's been a while. I was telling Nikki when I interviewed her for the podcast that we needed to take a field trip one day, all of us, to go see where it all got started at the Rack.
Sometimes I go work out there, and I look in that corner, and I'm like, that's where it all began.
Is there anything in that corner anymore?
It's like a tanning salon.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Or like a hair salon or something.
Yes, you're learning a
Something
lot
crazy.
there. So Reagan and I have known each other for a long while, considering that we were there. And I'm going to I think I've said this to you, but I'm going to be so honest.
Oh,
I
gosh.
don't remember, connecting before.
No.
No.
Because you had also gone to LA, lived your life. I knew of you, and you signed a record deal, and we're doing the LA thing, and I thought it was so cool. And then I came back from my college acting schools thing I did, and then I met you, and then we just kind of hit it off.
Yeah. Tell me about the college acting school stuff.
So originally what I did is I went to this place called YWAM, which stands for Youth with a Mission. So the first 3 months, it's a non-denominational, Christian outreach thing. And so you go for the first 3 months and you study the Bible. And then I lived in Russia on a mission trip. I came back, I worked for a while, got back into acting, went back because it's an accredited college. So I went back for a film school.
Nice.
So it was school for acting for the screen, and then there was a school for directing for film, and we coincided, we worked together. And so it was a 3-month intensive where we had, 6 different teachers, one per week.
Nice.
And then, I don't know if that math adds up, but we had a few different teachers, and then we put that all in for our final. We had to we did 16 short films. There were only 7 actors. So everybody was in every film, and we didn't sleep, and those will never see the light of day.
It sounds like college.
Yeah, but it was really fun, and it was just, it really blossomed, I think.
And where was that?
time. In Hawaii, on the Big Island.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So Russia and Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
What did you get up to in Russia?
As soon as we got there, all of our connections fell through.
Oh.
So we kind of got there and didn't have anything to do, so we basically walked a lot, and then finally we started getting in touch with, we got hooked up with Salvation Army and did food banks for the homeless or underprivileged, and we got to meet a lot of those people. But it was mostly working with the same orphanages, and we met with the same kids. But the hard thing was those kids would be oh, so you guys are gonna go in 2 months and we'll never see you again. And it kind of struck a chord. We're oh, this is what this glorified mission trip is. People don't actually stay. And so it was just oh, well, I guess we're having a good time while we're here,
Oh.
I was people really need to, if that's what you're called to do, you should go and live there and do the thing.
Sure.
And be a part of the community,
Yeah.
Because otherwise, what are you doing?
That sounds like it was rewarding.
Oh, yeah.
Would that feel accurate?
Well, especially when you're, 18, 19 years old, and you go and you're there and you're experiencing a completely different culture, and by the end of it, you can kind of understand the language, and you meet all these great people. And Russians are some of the nicest people I've ever met. They're very welcoming, and something that really stuck with me was they, in America, we'll call people we just met friends. Like, oh, this is my friend. I met him a few weeks ago. Like, they don't call people friends unless they've invited you to their home and, like, have dinner or had drinks with you.
I see. So you have to kind of earn it.
Yeah, you have to earn it. And so that type of relationship was very, like, I really like that, I guess you could say.
How did being in Russia affect your mental health journey? Was that a component of that at all?
I think it was more so, like, it really taught me how to be alone and, like, to be on my own, because I'm very much kind of a self-reliant human as is, but that's completely different. So to, like, be really reliant on me being okay with, like, being alone with my thoughts. It taught me how to do that. I think it more so just that kind of realization that people just come and go on these mission trips. Like, I think it's great that churches do mission trips for kids when, like, in youth groups and stuff, but the reality is like, you're helping for a little bit and then you're leaving and not really helping. I think that has formed my vision as an adult on how to help people. And then when I went to my acting school, you know, we're taught that there's, like, different spheres of life, and I realized that I can be creative in this sphere and still be a good human and put forth all this energy and work and creativeness into helping people long term, you know. So I think that's always been my question to myself, is like, okay, when you make it big, when you start to become successful and make money off of this thing that, you know, you barely make money off of right now, what are you going to do with that money and how are you going to help people? Like, what kind of things can you invest in or put to good use, or, you know, what kind of things can you truly do to impact long term?
Yeah, there's permanence to it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that my time in Russia definitely shifted into that creative aspect of, like, oh, this is something I can do eventually long term, but I have to get there. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense. That I think that if I speak plainly, like, when you think about Christian mission trips or any sort of religious mission trips that go to a country that helps, there tends to be an idea around it of, like, glorifying this good deed that I did and how that justifies my morality in a sense. And so I'm grateful that you have found a way to compound that into something different and create motivation for you. Yeah. That sounds like you had a really healthy perspective on that.
Yeah, I think it was, I mean, again, I was like 18 or 19, and then I went back to Hawaii and, like, kind of opened up. One of our teachers, Kirk something, shout out. Yeah, I'll have to look it up. His first name was Kirk. He is a method actor, and he really opened up, like, through movement and stuff, and it like unlocked, like, rage in me. Like, I got emotional, and then it unlocked rage, and I probably shouldn't have been around a bunch of people in Caddy College, because I, like, almost wanted to fight somebody at this very Christian school, and I was like, what's happening? And then I straight up went to him, and I laid down some F-bombs, and he's like, you know what, that's okay, you unlocked something, and you felt it, and that you just need to, like, decompress for a little bit and sit with it, but what you're doing is right. It's not wrong. I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Can you...
A little tangent. I don't know how that...
No, I love that came up, because I have a lot of thoughts when it comes to this idea of method acting.
Oh, I'm terrified of it.
Can you talk to me about your perspective on method acting? Because I think that there's a real deep connection between method acting, the perspective of the general society, and mental health, and how they all kind of correlate.
Well, I don't agree with method acting because... your acting teacher is not your therapist. Therefore, they cannot bring you down. They can't talk you off the ledge. So you shouldn't be unlocking those doors if somebody who's not trained to talk you down is there. Like, for example, there was a teacher, and we were in a class, and there's a bunch of, it was like a teenage adult class, and we did one class of method acting, and I knew what I was getting myself into. I've, like, unlocked this thing within the past year that I knew that I could get to an emotional place and bring myself back. So I went in, like, knowing what was going to happen. And we sat in this dark room, and we were basically guided through this meditation of like, okay, picture this person you love so dearly. Are they still with you? Are they not with you? And of course, everybody starts crying because you've unlocked something you might not have known was there. Maybe it was a bad feeling. Maybe this person that impacted you, all of a sudden, it's a bad memory that like came forward. And there's all these 14-year-olds that are like crying and bawling, and then the lights come on, and this person was like, okay, let's get into class now. I'm like, no. You can't just tell us to open and unlock these things that you're not willing to help us put back. And so that's why I don't agree with method acting, because number one, acting in how I'm pursuing it is a job. I need to be able to be professional on set. I need to be able to get emotional and be able to pull myself back so I can interact with a director or my co-stars and not be, the Debbie Downer on set. Granted, emotions are going to come as they come, but I need to be able to control my instrument in a way that I know that I can put that back into a box or decompress myself. And it just really rubbed me the wrong way that this person introduced method acting without allowing us to come down, or, if you will, or help us put it back, and then assume that we're just ready to get into a scene, Yeah. And a lot of people had to like take a break and like walk outside and like do a lap around the building. And I was like, don't love that. So that's why I really love what Doug did the other day. He's like, hey guys, like I've had a rough day today. I really want to go through this meditation. I don't know if you were there for that.
I wasn't.
He like walked us through this meditation to kind of realign our creativity. And we basically turned off the dark room. He like walked us through this meditation. He took us through a house that felt familiar. And then we walked into a room, and we were 5 years old. And we got to play with whatever we wanted to when we were 5. And there was a lot of freedom in it. And then we walked out. He's like, is this now a familiar house? Maybe if it was a house you didn't recognize, is this a familiar house? And it's like, okay, now we're going to slowly walk out of the meditation. We're going to walk out of the neighborhood, and you're going to slowly open your eyes. And it was at the end of class, and everybody there's a calm over the room, and everybody, like, I probably, at that point, he's like, okay, you're going to close the door. We're done with the house now. Like, we're done with that. And he walked us out of it. Again, he's not a therapist. He's an acting coach. But if you're going to get into somebody's emotional state, you need to be able to walk them out of it. And that's why, again, I just disagree I think it's very unsafe. You're not there on set to make these huge breakthroughs. If you want to make breakthroughs, you do it in class where it's safe. But, like, I just would never touch method acting on a set.
Yeah. No.
That was a lot.
No, I appreciate your insight. It's, because, like I said, I have a lot of feeling. Real quick, Doug Harry, our amazing Wednesday scene study coach, shout out to him and his amazing work. He is a guide to true artistic development, and I have much respect for him, as I'm assuming you do as well.
Yeah.
I think that's all really interesting.
Do you feel differently about that?
I feel differently, but it's not that I disagree. My issue with method acting is the excuse that it allows.
Yeah,
so like
absolutely.
You hear about these celebrity stories. The best one being Jared Leto in Suicide Squad sending rats to his
he did that?
like a box of dead rats. Don't quote me on that. I think it's something along those lines.
Tabloids,
Yeah. He sent something awful to co-stars within like means to say like I'm in character, which is just disrespectful and violating of boundaries. My issue with method acting comes from a place of the lack of boundaries.
Yeah.
Like
it's also unsafe. Like boundaries are super important.
Yeah. Well, and the other part is trying to so within like method, I went to Lee Strasberg. I studied there for a year. I have some context to it within like its very purest form. And there, I think why I go back and forth on my perspective of it is that there is a lot of respect built into it. But it's, and I understand the desire to pull from real life experiences and create from there. And I do think that can be healthy, but it goes back to what you were talking about with like, bringing something a feeling out of someone and then not giving it a place to rest once we
Exactly.
finish with the work.
Yeah.
Like something I say quite often to my students is throw the breath we can control, manage, and distill. So yes, we should experience the feeling, but we don't have to experience it 100%. We can find through our breath the ability to distill it down to a safe, manageable place. And I think that is where the work of an actor really comes. Whereas if you have to stay in character for 6 months on set, I don't believe you are a good actor. I believe you are a lazy actor. I don't believe you hold responsibility to your work. You allow your work to take hold of you.
It's a job.
Right.
It's a job.
It's a job,
you
and
know?
you're not looking at it as a job. You're looking at you're taking it too seriously. This is supposed to be fun.
Exactly.
And we don't have to walk in introducing ourselves as our characters.
Yeah.
So I think that there can be good and bad, but I also think that within that bad, you have the responsibility to find how to manage it.
Yes. And again, like for every role and every script, there's a different way that you might come at it. Your usual way might not work, so you might have to go more into method, and that will get you to where you need to be for that take or for that, moment. And I've actually felt more emotional depth finding emotion from a third party than actually feeling it, because it allows me to process it logically.
Well, and it's not like you also don't have a relationship to that third party. When I was doing, I think you were there that day when I did the monologue from Angels in America in class and everyone surrounded me.
Yeah.
My connection to that has nothing to do with my journey as Grant and everything to do with my journey as a queer person in relation to those who have come before me in order for me to live the life that I live now.
Yeah.
So it is surrounding a third party story, but my reflection of that. Yeah. If I may, I would really love to do a full rundown of our scene that we did together when we did Euphoria.
Yeah.
I would love to gain kind of your perspective on where that landed for you, how that helped you grow within your creative and maybe mental health journey.
Yeah.
What did it look like for you?
Well, so for the scene we did for Euphoria, it was like a amalgamation of 2 different seasons that Grant wonderfully put together, and it's when Maddie finds out that Cassie's been sleeping with
Her ex-boyfriend.
ex. And that was a pretty hard character for me to get it into, because Cassie and I are literally opposite humans. And so for me to find this girly girl of oh my gosh, I think it was hard for me to kind of sit into that. So I think the whole time I kind of had a wall up. I think I was judging Cassie the whole time instead of sitting into it.
I think you said that as well. There was an ownership of it. There was an awareness of it during, as opposed to something that came to you after. Does that feel accurate?
Yeah. And so I think it was hard for me to reconcile who this person was to who I was. And I think from that point, learning to find the similarities has been a huge thing in even things I don't like. How would I react honestly in this situation? How are Cassie and I the same? Would I ever honestly do that? Probably not. Would she have done that before? Probably not. But now she's did it. How would she feel? Fucking sorry.
You can cuss on this. You're good.
Shit, and she'd probably feel like shit. I would feel like shit. I would feel terrible. And so I think those are the similarities looking back I could have really played into. I almost wanted to kiss your ass more, instead of being the one that's hard and standoffish.
Interesting. That's so interesting because that's been a huge. I do want to touch on that how doing that scene made me feel. I think we've talked about it a little bit, but on your note, something that's been really powerful, and I just did a lesson on this on Thursday, and then 2 weeks ago with my Tuesday class on words and the power of words and how we use words to judge our characters, that we villainize them or we we can either villainize them or we make them victims, as opposed to like, how do we find power? This was the exercise that I did with my students, is like taking an opportunity, having a student play a pimp, right? And you knowing the student, taking the opportunity for a student to play a pimp, and then asking them, name a quality within a pimp. Someone who wants power, right? Why do they want that power? Because they want to control. Why does someone control? Could it be because they love someone? Or they believe that they love someone? And one of my students was very like to fight me on that, which is great. Thank you students for fighting me.
Teachers need to be pushed too.
Yes, scare me. And it was interesting how we can move from a place of like this destructive, abusive, hurtful, someone that you don't relate to kind of character, into a place of like, this is where we connect. This can be the one item where I can find myself, whether it's my previous self or my current self, or where I see myself in the future. Like, words are so powerful that we can use them to reclaim our experience as the character.
Well, and I even think, kind of bringing this back to like mental health, I last week or maybe was it last week, whatever, before a break, in a scene I was doing, also shout out to Doug Harry for being patient with me, and like, for some reason I can tap in. I have a very large emotional well that I can tap in and be emotional with, but I really wanted to lean into more comedy. So I found this scene from a play, and I thought it was going to be a comedy, and it turned out to be quite a drama. And the reality is like, we could not figure out why I wasn't leaving the scene. And I think I probably should have prefaced before the scene, like, I want to work on making bigger choices. But I find that with comedic scenes, I'm playing an editor in my head and thinking that this person is somebody I could never be. Like, the character is this badass boss bitch I've seen all these girls a million times as like lawyers and stuff, but I was judging her. Like, maybe that's a common theme. Like, I can't seem to get into a place of like
empathizing with that kind of
person, because, you know, Doug was like, well, aren't you a boss bitch? I was like, yeah, I mean, I've run restaurants. I've made a lot of money. Like,
right.
I get it. But to the same extent, like, I have a hard time if I don't think I'm that person, or if I have a hard time connecting with them. I have a hard time doing it and making the big choices and doing stuff like that. So maybe my mental health is like, this is just another thing that I need to unlock, to be like, oh, there is compassion in this,
right.
And letting the filter go. Stop being the editor, you know?
Yeah, I think like expectations and results of like who this person is never really fair to the character.
No.
It's about exploration first.
Yeah.
That's how I rehearse now within the last couple of months, and I would argue that was kind of how we rehearsed for Euphoria, is like, how do we figure out how these characters move and act and feel for each other, and then through discovery of Class 2 and Doug's help, I think that, like, if I may suggest, like, through trying to find alignment with this character, I have always found so much power in sexual liberation. And this gets back to the idea of Maddie here in a moment, the character Maddie, and how sexual liberation is defined by what you feel liberated in.
Yeah.
And applying that to the circumstance within the text, that within the character. I respect the character because they are sexually liberated in a way that I can identify with.
Okay. Yeah.
That's always been, I think, like, as I've grown into my work, especially around the idea of sex, like, I have felt a freedom within it because I can trust my own sexual liberation within each of the characters, whatever the act may be. And that was huge for Maddie. I had a very different experience where I identified with Maddie richly and deeply, and
well, I think
so fully.
That's why you picked it, because you just wanted to play her, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Well, and even the development of how we defined her, him, them. That was really powerful for me to, while there was like these really concrete things that we shared in common, the character and I, there was these few aspects that brought a real deep sense of power to my life and my experience at the time. So understanding the fluidity of my gender, within, or my gender expression, and the gender expression of this character was super empowering. You know, I don't know if I've told you this yet, but playing Maddie, there was this really beautiful moment where I bought the costume. Or I bought the pieces.
You were so excited about it.
And I looked like a hot bitch.
Yeah, you did.
And that's how I came around to... I'm probably going to have to censor this. That's how I came around to what I was saying in the scene. And to this day, one of my mantras, I'm a hot bitch with a big... And what was really cool is I put on the costume and my parents were in the living room. And I've had somewhat of a disconcerting relationship with my father when it comes to my sexuality, and I came out and I was in costume and I was like this
the lace
thing.
Yeah.
There was like this lace top.
It's like fishnet
yes
top. Yeah.
And I had leather shorts that I didn't end up wearing because they were so uncomfortable and
you
so
were
tight.
not going to be able to move in those things. They were like sticking to the bench we were using.
It was not happening. Anyway, I came out and I sat in front of my dad, and you know, he made his discomfort really known. Fairly so. Yeah. He's allowed to feel to feel discomfort. That did not change the fact that I took power in myself.
Felt good.
And I felt hot. I felt good. Like, what a beautiful expression of the power of femininity in a way that I hadn't experienced. Like, and relinquishing for me in my mental health, like relinquishing the need to defend my femininity. It was really powerful, and I just sat and I sat and I sat. And through that, it was interesting. I talked to my therapist about it the next day, and he said, "You reclaimed."
Oh,
and I did.
Cute.
He kind of guided me to this place where we were talking about how when I was 6 years old, when I was 6 years old, I would sit in the closet and play with my Barbies because I didn't want my dad to see. And
then
sitting,
you walked out
yes.
and you're like, this is who I am. I'm not hiding anymore.
No, it was me. Exactly. It was me sitting and saying, I get to reclaim that for that little boy. So it was really like that. I've learned a lot from characters that I've played both in class and professionally, but Maddie taught me a true essence of self that I have yet to find before and hope to continue to find with the characters that I play. And I think if we want to talk about the method, right, like there has to be an inherent connection to the method.
Yeah.
If this is the experience of healing that's happening.
Yeah.
I would define it differently. I would define it as emotional exploration, developing emotional intelligence, finding a way to empathize and lack judgment for the character. I think that those are more beneficial than broadening it to the method
acting.
Yeah. What can be gifted unto you through the work as opposed to what you can shove in someone's face.
Yeah. Well, and I even found that I've never really had like one of those aha moments acting, like, oh, this person really affected me. It's just been more of I really felt good after this scene, you know, like I felt really good about what happened, except for a scene I did with one of our classmates, Eric. We did another scene from another play, and he was my dad. He's my father, and he's recently just passed away, and I'm coming to terms with how to deal with it, and he was a genius, and I feel like I'm going crazy like he went crazy. And so we did this scene, and the first time I did it, I was so I was so in the character that there was something that like there was like a bridge that broke that I felt that was holding me together, that I let go, and I was genuinely, truly like broken on stage. And that was probably the first and only time that that's happened to me, where I truly was like, I was so in the character that it wasn't like
you were living 100% as opposed to managing.
Correct. Like everything broke, and like even Eric, like I knew it was effective because Eric called me what he calls his daughter, and I saw the sorrow in his eyes, like he wanted to help me, but he couldn't touch me, and that was part of the shtick. And it was just like one of those moments, and I think it would be cool to get to that place again, but you know, that's a journey, and I'll get there when I get there. But I think it's really cool that you can sit and relate and find things from these characters that you play, you know.
Talk to me more about how you would like to explore that again. What do you mean by that?
Well, I don't know that I necessarily want acting to be therapy for me, because I'm a little unhinged sometimes. And again, I want it to be a job, like every hour I put into this is like towards a job, and I need to be able to turn off, and I don't want to be emotional all the time. So I think for me, I want to get to a place where I can allow myself to fall into that well, use it for what I need, and then come back out and say, okay, I'm Ragen again, you know? But I want to sit so fully in those characters that, like, I'm not judging them, and I'm not... And that's the thing for me, like, I don't want to judge people.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been like, you never know what somebody else is going on in their life, but I don't want to judge a character because these plays and these snapshots and these scenes are literally, if you walked away, their life would keep going, right?
Right.
So I want to be able to...
honoring
Yes,
that,
I want to be able to sit in that character and let the bridge break and no filter on and be like, okay, this is how I truly would react, but also, you know, allow myself to emote those feelings.
Okay. Yeah,
I think that has to do with a lot of outside work because I've never gone to therapy, so probably I should do that. I probably should do that.
Helpful. I believe that I believe that the work can be therapy.
Yeah.
I don't think that it has. I think like it shouldn't be the responsibility. I mean, the whole premise of how I work comes down to two things. Mm-hmm. That we may find the moment through creative healing, and then we may use that creative healing to live a more gratifying life. Mm-hmm. That's what I believe. But that does not mean that is... it's a may, that it may
happen.
help. It may happen. And not only that, but this isn't the only resource we should be using to be healing ourselves.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm really curious about what you were just speaking on, because for me, like, and I think we discussed it with Doug a couple times, especially after I had my full mental breakdown on stage. I was doing a scene, and I was so ultra focused on protecting my partner, that I lost track of my own. I kind of compromised my relationship with self as the actor, and so I just fell into the scene. Exactly. Like I wasn't aware of my breath, taking no part in my body, and therefore I was unable to manage distill and control. And I think something that's kind of shifted for me is like, how do we give ourselves to the character within percentages?
Yeah, great question. I don't know.
I think that breath is a huge part of it. For me, that's my personal experience. Mm-hmm. But being able to say, here you go, buddy, you get 70% of me. And if you take any more, I'm pulling back.
But because don't you think that's method, though?
What do you mean?
Don't you think that, like, that's a method acting? Like, you're giving over, like, Grant's going away and so no, that's coming in.
Yeah, let me clarify that. I'm giving you 70%.
Yeah.
As... I'm giving 70% of myself to the character. The other 30% holds firm within the actor, within Grant itself, in order to make sure that 70, that percentage that I give it, does not take over more.
Got it.
So when I played Maddie, for example, I did this amazing scene right before I left LA. It was the last time I was in the studio, and it was such a good scene that I was like, I'm not coming back because I need to end on this level. I played this character whose partner was dying of Alzheimer's. I was so present to both what was happening in front of me and myself at the same time. And I think that's the work that we have to do as actors, is how do we protect and keep boundaries and safety, and also develop an intentionality around allowing ourselves to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know, I think that I talk about the 4 conduits that I believe in, that I got to teach you in our little test drive class: the breath, the body, the senses of sensitivity. And I think each actor tends to be drawn to 1 or 2, but I do think the responsibility of all 4, that there is responsibility in all 4 to use them to manage the fullness in which we drop into a character. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I can even say, like, so I had this audition for a movie by Tyler Perry movie.
Woohoo, girl, big name.
Yeah, and it was the fucking worst audition I've ever done.
Why?
So I got Jessica, our previous, I still take privates from her, but she used to work here at the studio. She was on Zoom or FaceTime or whatever, and I was supposed to have this English accent. And I got it. The audition was due the next day. And I was like, oh, no problem. I can do an English accent. No problem. But it was also set in the 40s. And she's prim and proper. So I'm like trying to channel my Downton Abbey, which is totally screwing up my accent. And so we're sitting here for an hour trying to get this done. She's like, okay, I need you. She's like, breathe. Take 10 deep breaths. And then she's like, okay, I need you to close your eyes. And she's like, I need you to imagine where you at. Are you on the hood of the car? Are you, what does it smell like? What did you just eat?
Yeah.
And that, for the first time, like, I don't usually use that because I'm such a breath and body kind of actor.
I would agree. Yeah.
That I don't ever really use the senses, but to literally pull me outside of myself to be able to fall into this character, I had to physically smell the hamburger I was eating. I had to hear the car noises and the location we were at. And once I did that, it was like the veil lifted and I was able to like go into it. So using those 4 senses, I was able to kind of drop into it. Still an awful audition, but I did it, you know, going back to like the senses of like, this can help you get to where you need to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of pride that I take within my belief of the 4 conduits and how they connect to not only just being a better actor, but finding, because all 4 of those things can also take place, like can apply to real life circumstances. If you're in a heightened situation, you breathe, you connect to your body, you allow yourself to be vulnerable, and you take a look around at your surroundings. That's how you ground. And
it's like you're having an anxiety attack every time you act, and you're like, okay, what can I see? What can I feel?
Yes, exactly.
Am I breathing? Am I not breathing? Okay, hold your breath for 10 seconds and let it out. Like, it's literally, that's the first time I've thought of it, but you have to be a masochist to be an actor because it's literally like you're giving yourself anxiety attacks every time you go on stage, you know?
I think that's to some extent, that is fair, but also I think that's part of why I do what I do, why I do this podcast, why I teach the way I do, why I try to celebrate the idea of creativity and that we don't have to suffer for our art.
Yes, that's something I'm just learning in this last year. And
it's so wonderful to learn that even when I had my emotional breakdown on stage, there was absolutely a hangover that came with it.
You did such a great job though at defining and setting that boundary of like, we all thought, like, from an audience perspective, we all thought that was the scene. And we're like, are you going to write it out? Like, it was brilliant. But then you're like, no, I need a minute. And everybody's like, oh, shit, like, this is real. And I think, like, kind of what we were talking about before we got on the podcast is, like, there is no boundary setting in Reno. Yeah. Like, it's such a small town that you, don't want to piss anybody off. You don't want to get fired. You don't want to do this. And even in class, there have been moments where, like, I don't feel comfortable with this, but you don't say anything. And I think that was a beautiful example of saying, this is my boundary. Please don't touch me. I need a minute. Yeah. I need a minute with this. And that's something we don't ever see. So I thought that was great to be like, okay, cool.
Well, and
you can do that.
Right. And the other thing that I tried to do to continue to live in integrity of that is the next week I said to Doug, who guided me through it brilliantly to the best of his ability, and I have appreciation for. I was able to go to him and say, I need you to keep me aware of my breath. I need you to remind me to be aware of my body. Here are the things that I need. I need to establish a safe word. Here are the things that I need in order to function to my best ability and feel safe in the work. And I think that's what I want my students to know that they get to do. That they can go on set and say, I want a safe word. And that's okay. And that doesn't make you a bitch, and it doesn't make you a diva, and you get to show up and ask for that.
Well, and I even think that's like, as an actor here in Reno, a lot of us are just getting our credits, and we're just getting footage for our reel. Right. And so I think, speaking of boundary, like, I was just on a feature and it was great and I hope it turns out great. We'll see how it goes. But I think the one most frustrating thing I can say is that there are no boundaries here because it's such a quote-unquote small town that I would try to hide and seclude myself in order for me to get, especially on emotional days, like, I need time away from you guys. And I know you guys are all joking and blah, 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 blah. But, like, I want to make good work. I want to do a justice to this character. Like, I want to be the best that I can be, and there's time for fun and there's time for games, but like on my serious days, like it would all be joking. And I would sit in this emotional well for take after take after take, and they'd be like, are you mad? Are you okay? What's going on? I'm like, no, I'm fine, guys, but like I'm trying to do the work. Like I'm going underwater for a little bit. I'm totally good. I just need to kind of be left alone to do this. But there's no sense of boundaries and there's no sense of professionalism that when you are underwater, like you don't have to be underwater and emotional the entire day.
The entire day,
but there's no sense of like, oh, this is a real actor, like let me give them their space to do the work that we're paying them to do.
Right.
And that's probably the most frustrating thing. Like there's no boundary setting, and if you set that boundary, like, oh, she's a bitch, or oh, that's kind of the vibe I got. Like, are you mad? Like, I want you to be able to feel like you can come back to set. I'm like, you guys, now you're making me feel awkward, and I can't get into character. Like, please stop.
Right.
So it's just kind of that thing that I think Reno really needs more of is boundary setting, and really, because once you know that those boundaries are there, you can be emotional and feel your body and your breath and get to that emotional place. Be like, okay, I'm done.
Right. Right.
But I just don't think that's here yet.
Yeah. One of my goals, I follow IFC, the intimacy. Oh damn! There's a class. The intimacy something. Shout out. There's a class that you can take to become an intimacy coordinator, and while I don't see, like this isn't like you said, like Reno's really small, but I do feel like we owe it to ourselves, and I owe it to both my students and to the community, the artistic community that I believe in, to show up and provide something that is needed. And so by the end of 2023, I hope to have at least started my training. It's expensive, so
but that's amazing though.
I have a passion for it. You've seen me teach on it. Like I have had, and maybe one day I'll delve into it in one of my videos or my podcast, but I've had too many experiences as a man, which it's less likely for a man than it is a woman, where I have not felt like my boundaries were respected. And so I feel as though as my journey continues, I have a responsibility within my passion for mental health and creativity to align them when it comes to intimacy. And that means hugging and kissing and holding hands and all of it, to know that, when I walk up to a student and I need to adjust their costume, I say, is it okay if I touch your shoulders?
Yeah.
I'm going to touch your shoulders, and that's all I'm going to touch. That's what we need. That's the standard that needs to be set here in Reno.
Well, I've even found myself, like, even in this play I'm rehearsing, like, there's a few uncomfortable moments, but even then, like, I'm supposed to, like, hit this guy's leg a few times, and I found myself, after the fact, being like, oh, shit, I should have asked him. Right. And that's something I'm trying to incorporate more into my work, too. But I also think kind of reeling all this back to mental health is, like, for me, it's the intimacy, and maybe I'm just realizing this right now, but it's for me and acting and letting the bridges break and the walls down. It's the intimacy of knowing that I'm safe. And a lot of the times I don't feel safe enough to break the walls down. Yeah. So when I do feel safe, like even right now, like as I'm talking about it, I'm getting emotional. Like I could probably start crying. Yeah. But I feel safe with you, and I know that my boundaries are safe with you. And I think that the more that safety and boundaries are, at least for me personally, put into place, then I feel more free to be creative and do things that are out of my comfort zone. When I feel, it's so funny because when I feel the box is set, I feel like I can go outside of it. Yes, that's the most important thing, is like the reason that you feel that way is because once we know what our boundaries are, we are actually freer to explore. If there's a field out in front of you and the trees line for miles and miles and miles and miles, you don't know how far you should go. You don't know how to safely get back home. Yeah. But if there's a fence that says this is how far you can go, you actually feel freer to explore within that fence. Yeah. And maybe that fence changes, and maybe it develops over time, and it extends, or maybe it gets closer. Yeah. But it's a line of respect between you and I
I'm curious. Have you ever talked to Doug about what kind of boundaries you would like to set within your work or on this stage in this environment?
No, I think I just recently, before break, because I felt a little sideswiped on the direction the scene went, because I really wanted to work on comedy. He's like, oh, shoot, I really wish we would have talked before this, and I should have been the one to set that boundary, because he didn't know. Right. And so I think for me, we did talk, and I was like, I really want to work on more comedy. Like, I feel like I can sit fully in a character and breathe through it and, like, be in tune in the moment, be present. I was like, but I tend to judge comedic pieces. Like, I think it should run funny. Mm-hmm. And so we sat down. I was like, this is what I want to work on. I want to work on making bigger choices. He's like, okay, great. Now find a scene the coming weeks and the coming months that lies into bigger choices and comedic timing and blah, blah, blah. So not necessarily totally boundary set, but I did kind of start a conversation about, okay, this is what I need, you know?
Yeah. I'm so grateful that this is what the conversation evolved into. Boundaries and safety are so innately part of what I find passion, how I find my passion within my work. So I'm glad that you're developing that for you, and I truly hope, Ragen, your work. Oh, I'm getting emotional about it. I'm like, oh, my girl's growing up. Your work has just astonished me since my return from LA. I really getting to work with you. I mean, I'm working with you a second time. Yeah. And seeing how you've developed, I use you as an example a lot when I talk about my belief that creativity can help us live a more gratifying life, but also living a gratifying life can help you be creative. Yeah. And I think that, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I see you living a gratifying life, and I really believe that part of it bleeds into why your work has thrived in the way that it has.
Well, I think, quitting a very stable financial job to pursue this unsure career choice.
That pregnant pause said a lot.
Yeah, has really pushed me to, like, be the best that I can be as fast as I can be. Granted, everything is going to come in its own time, but it's really shifted into there's no plan B. So I think giving myself the permission to just send it has really helped over the last, 2 years.
Yeah, and you can tell it's really awesome. Yeah. I would like to end with a couple questions. What's it called? I almost said fire round. Shotgun.
Speed round?
Speed round.
Speed round? Fire round? I
That's
think
like
that
a very
works.
speed round is like a very much like a podcasty term that I have no fucking clue about. So speed round. How do you find creativity? How do you define creativity?
Freedom.
Freedom. Yes.
Creativity is freedom to color outside the lines.
Yes, I love it. That's so beautiful. How do you define love?
I define it as a choice every day, not a feeling.
So you think it's an action?
Yeah.
Oh, that's exactly how I feel. That I'm so with you there. I define love as choosing to accept the moment, no matter what the moment has in store for you.
Yeah.
That's inherent love. Making the choice every day to love the moment. Sometimes that means loving me. Sometimes that means loving whatever the circumstance may be.
Yeah.
That's how I define love. So I love that, and that inherently is an action. It's a choice. So yeah. I love that you share that thought. How in your everyday life do you find time to creatively heal?
Honestly, I think it's by submitting every day onto Actors Access. Just the hope that I'll work on something is healing in itself. And I also think creatively, I have been listening to more music and just dancing around the house. But I think that, really my goal for this year is to do one scene a month in class. Yeah. And that is something that I really want to work on.
I'm with you. We'll be accountability partners on that.
Self-tape, yes. On just self-taping and just working by myself, I think.
I love that. Yeah. Final one, talking about feelings, right? How does it feel to delve into your passion of creativity? What does it feel like, body? feeling words that you would use?
It makes me feel like a hot air balloon. Like my chest is just light because it's just so joyful. And I think me coming from a spectrum where I was just so unhappy in my last career, just like drinking to get through the day because people are awful guests at restaurants, and drinking at the end of the night, being hungover, repeating the cycle. Also, alcohol is, a downer, so there's that. But just to know that I'm doing something that brings me joy is just, it feels like you're a 5-year-old kid playing with a balloon or a kite, feel light.
I love that you, so the way that I have defined my life, but also intrinsically through my life, my creativity, right now I feel like a balloon tied to the ground. Mm-hmm. Grounded. I'm not going anywhere. I'm right fucking here. My feet are on the floor. I am tied to the ground and I'm going nowhere. But that does not mean that I'm not free to move.
Yeah.
And float around and be where I need to be and be within fluidity of my knowledge and my creation. I think that I love this idea of a balloon. There's something so
light
about it. Yeah. Thank you, Ragen, so much. I'm not going to try and say your last name because I only got it once at the beginning.
You did so good, though, so it counts.
Great.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
This was so fun.
It was so fun. You and I need to do this more often.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't need to record it, but...
Great. Let's do it.
It'd be great content either way. This has been the Creative Healing Podcast. My name is Grant Davis. I'm your host. And remember that we can always develop as creatives, but through creativity, we may find the potential it has to help us live a more gratifying life. Take care.